Tom lived on the edge of a quiet town, where wide fields stretched under the open sky. His ranch was not the biggest in the county, but it was peaceful and full of life. He raised a few horses, grew hay, and enjoyed the kind of freedom that came with open land for years. Tom lived without trouble. He minded his own business, and the town mostly left him alone. One spring morning, he noticed something strange near his main road entrance. A group of workers was digging holes and putting posts into the ground. By the time Tom walked closer, he saw the outline of a fence rising up, blocking the path that led from the highway straight into his ranch. Tom frowned. "This is my road," he said to the workers. "Who told you to build this here?" The workers shrugged. One of them pointed across the street where new houses were being built. "The HOA told us to fence this area. We just follow orders." Tom had heard of the HOA, the homeowners association that had recently formed when a new neighborhood popped up near his land. They wanted tidy lawns, painted fences, and rules for everything. Tom never thought their reach would stretch all the way to his ranch. He walked back to his house and pulled out the old file of papers that showed his property lines. His land stretched far past the fence posts the workers had set up. The road that now stood blocked was his private entrance, a piece of land he had maintained for years. Later that afternoon, a man in a neat suit knocked on Tom's door. He introduced himself as Martin, the HOA president. His smile was wide, but his eyes held no warmth. "Tom," Martin began, "we have put up a community fence. It keeps the new neighborhood secure and organized. You still have another small path to your ranch at the back. You can use that." Tom shook his head. "That back road is a muddy trail, not a proper entrance. You block the real road that belongs to my land." Martin kept smiling. "Technically, we fence for the good of all. It looks cleaner this way. You should be grateful your ranch is near a fine neighborhood. It will raise your property value." Tom did not answer right away. He looked out the window at the half-built fence. It stood tall and strong, made of steel and wood. Then he turned back to Martin. "You had no right to build it on my land," Tom said firmly. But Martin only shrugged. "It is done now. Enjoy your back road." He tipped his hat and left. That night, Tom could not sleep. He thought about how unfair it was. His ranch entrance had been cut off without his say. Worse, he noticed that the HOA members had built their new road in a way that connected directly through the land near his gate. Without asking him, they had used the easiest route, one that crossed his private property before winding into the neighborhood. The next morning, Tom saddled his horse and rode the fence line. He traced the boundary carefully, every foot of that new road. Every car that now entered the new houses passed over his land. At first, Tom was angry. He thought about calling a lawyer or tearing the fence down himself. But as the sun rose higher and the cars of the new neighbors rolled across the road, a different idea came to him. He smiled slowly. If the HOA wanted to use his land, then they would have to pay for it. Tom spent the next week gathering information. He checked county records, old maps, and land deeds. Everything proved what he already knew. The road lay on his private property. The fence they had built cut off his own entrance. Yet they still depended on his land to drive into their new homes. One evening, as the orange light of sunset spread across the fields, Tom hammered a sign into the ground near the new road. The sign was large, painted in bold letters, "Private Road. Toll required." At first, the neighbors laughed. They thought it was a joke. But the next day, Tom sat near the road in a small booth he had built overnight. A wooden box sat in front of him, marked "Pay Here." The first car slowed down, confused. A man rolled down his window. "What is this?" Tom answered calmly. "This is my private road. You want to drive through. You pay the toll, $5. Each time." The man argued, shouted, and threatened to call the HOA, but Tom stayed firm. In the end, the driver tossed a bill into the box and drove through, muttering under his breath. Word spread quickly. By the end of the week, every neighbor had seen the sign. Some were furious. Some were shocked, but all of them realized the truth. Without Tom's road, Their fancy neighborhood had no proper entrance that weekend. Martin returned, this time without a smile. He pointed at the booth. "You cannot do this. This is harassment." Tom leaned back in his chair. "This is my land. You blocked my entrance. Now you drive across my property every day. If you want to keep using it, you pay for it." Martin's face turned red. He tried to argue, but Tom showed him the old deeds and the county maps. Everything was legal. The HOA had fenced off Tom's rightful road, and in doing so, trapped themselves into needing his land. For the first time, Martin had no answer. He left without another word that night. As Tom counted the bills from the toll box, he felt something he had not felt in days: peace. He had turned their unfair fence into his own victory. What started as an insult to his freedom had now become a steady stream of income. But Tom knew this was only the beginning. The HOA would not give up so easily, and neither would he. The toll booth became a normal sight within a week. Tom sat there each morning and evening as cars rolled in and out of the neighborhood. Some neighbors paid without complaint. Others grumbled and tried to avoid eye contact, but every single one had to slow down and hand over money before using the road. Tom kept careful records. Each payment was logged into a small notebook. He wrote the driver's name if he knew it, the time, and the amount. It was not just for money, but for proof. Tom knew the HOA would not stay quiet. They would search for a way to push him back. He wanted every piece of evidence ready. Sure enough, one evening Martin showed up again. He was not alone this time. 2 other men in sharp suits stood beside him. They carried clipboards and spoke in serious tones. "Tom," Martin said, trying to sound calm, "this must stop. You cannot charge tolls on this road. It is part of our neighborhood plan." Tom stayed seated in his chair, arms crossed. "This is my land. I have papers to prove it." One of the men with a clipboard spoke next. "We represent the HOA's legal committee. We will take you to court if you continue this nonsense. The road is for the community." Tom smiled faintly. "Take me to court if you like. I have no fear of the truth. Your fence cut off my own ranch entrance. You forced me to use the muddy back trail, while all of you enjoy a smooth road across my property. If you want that road, you pay for it. That is fair." The men exchanged uneasy looks. Martin's face grew red again, just like the last time. He stepped closer. "You will regret this, Tom. The HOA is powerful. We make the rules here." Tom stood up slowly. His voice was calm but strong. "Your rules end at your property line. On my land, I make the rules. Do not forget that." The next week turned into a tense battle. The HOA tried different tricks. At first, they told residents to drive across a patch of empty field to avoid the toll booth. But the field was rough, full of rocks and ditches. Within days, 2 cars had flat tires, and another got stuck in the mud after a spring rain. Those drivers returned to the toll booth, angry but beaten. Next, the HOA put up notices on doors claiming Tom's toll was illegal. They said no one should pay him. Some neighbors tried to rush through without stopping. Tom, however, had planned for that. He placed a heavy gate across the road with a strong lock. Without the key, no one could pass when a car tried to speed through one morning. It slammed to a stop before the gate. Tom walked out calmly, pointed to the sign, and waited. After a long pause, the driver rolled down his window and handed him the money. The pressure grew stronger as the HOA held emergency meetings. They sent letters, warnings, and even threats, but Tom held his ground. His notebook of records grew thicker every day. The more they fought, the more determined he became. One afternoon, Tom got a visit from a family who lived in the new neighborhood. The father introduced himself as Daniel. His wife and 2 children stood behind him. "We do not like what the HOA has done," Daniel said honestly. "They promised us wide open roads and community security. Instead, they fenced off your ranch. And now we are stuck paying tolls. We do not blame you, Tom. We blame them." Tom was surprised. Most neighbors glared at him or muttered as they handed over their money. This was the first time someone had spoken kindly. Daniel continued, "If you need us to testify, we will. We saw the maps before buying our house. We know this road was never theirs to claim." Tom thanked him. Their support gave him strength. He realized the HOA's control was not absolute. Not everyone liked the heavy rules or the arrogant leaders. Some only wanted peace, just like him. Still, the battle was far from over. A week later, a sheriff's truck pulled up near the toll booth. The sheriff stepped out, had low against the sun, and greeted Tom. "I've had complaints," the sheriff said. "The HOA claims you're running an unlawful toll system." Tom handed him the thick file of deeds, maps, and daily payment logs. "This is my land, Sheriff. I am only charging people to use what they already took from me." The sheriff studied the papers carefully. At last, he nodded. "You're in the right, Tom. They built that fence too far. You own this entrance, no doubt about it. I'll report it to the county. Until a judge says otherwise, you keep doing what you're doing." Tom felt relief. The sheriff's words carried weight. The HOA could shout all they wanted, but the law was clear. But Martin did not stop. That evening, Tom saw him standing across the road, glaring. His polished shoes sank slightly in the dirt, but his anger kept him firm. "This isn't over," Martin called out. "We will find another way. You cannot embarrass the HOA forever." Tom only tipped his hat. Then, "I'll be ready for you." The days passed, and the toll booth turned into a steady part of Tom's life. He fixed the roof, added a proper cash box, and even built a small bench for visitors. Every time he looked at the bills stacking up, he felt a spark of pride. The HOA had tried to trap him by fencing his entrance. Instead, they had trapped themselves, paying him every time they wanted to drive home. But deep down, Tom knew Martin would not rest. The HOA president cared more about power than fairness. He would come back with new tricks, maybe even bigger weapons than letters or threats. Tom looked out over his ranch one evening as the sun sank behind the hills. The horses grazed peacefully in the field. The toll booth stood strong by the road. For now, the land was quiet, but a storm was coming. Tom could feel it. Tom had been running the toll booth for nearly a month. What began as a fight for fairness had turned into steady income. Each day he collected bills and coins, recording everything neatly in his notebook. The neighbors no longer argued as much. They slowed down, paid, and drove through. Some even waved, though most avoided his eyes. But Tom knew it would not stay quiet for long. Martin, the HOA president, was not the kind of man to let things go. He valued control, and Tom had taken that away from him. One Saturday morning, Tom woke to the sound of voices near the road. He stepped outside and saw a group of people with cameras, microphones, and notepads, reporters. At the front of the group stood Martin, smiling wide as if he had already won a prize. "Here's the so-called toll booth," Martin announced loudly. "This man charges innocent families to use the road to their homes. It is greedy, unfair, and against community spirit." The reporters scribbled notes and snapped pictures of Tom's booth. Some even pointed cameras at him. Tom walked down calmly, his hat low against the bright sun. He greeted the reporters. "Good morning. You should know the full story before you write it." One reporter stepped forward. "Is it true you are charging your neighbors money just to drive home?" Tom nodded. "Yes, but the land is mine. The HOA built a fence that blocked my real entrance. At the same time, they built their neighborhood road across my property without asking. I only charge because they use what is mine. I have deeds and maps to prove it." The reporters seemed surprised. They turned to Martin. "Is that true, Did the HOA build on his land?" Martin's smile flickered but quickly returned. "The community needs order. Sometimes small adjustments are made for the greater good. But this man is taking advantage of families. He does not care about children, safety, or community values. He only cares about money." Tom opened his notebook and held it up. "I care about fairness. Every dollar I've collected is recorded. Here's every payment as proof that they used my land. If the HOA wants to build a new road that does not cross my property, they are free to do it. But they want the easy way, and they expect me to give up my rights." The reporters leaned closer, asking more questions. Some took pictures of Tom's deeds and maps slowly. The crowd began to realize this was not a simple story of a greedy rancher. It was a battle between a single man and a powerful HOA. That evening, local news aired the story. The headline read, "Rancher charges HOA to use his land. Who is really at fault?" The video showed Martin boasting and Tom calmly holding his papers. The reaction surprised everyone. Many townsfolk sided with Tom. They respected his stand against the HOA. Calls poured into the county office, some supporting him, others demanding the HOA fix their mistake. But Martin was not done. He gathered the HOA board for an emergency meeting. They decided to use county officials to pressure Tom. Within a week, an inspector arrived at Tom's ranch with a clipboard. "You cannot operate a toll road without county permission," the inspector said. Tom kept calm. "This is not a public road. It is private property. I am not a business. I am simply charging trespassers for using my land." The inspector frowned. "The HOA insists it is community property." Tom pulled out the deeds once more. "Here, signed and sealed. My family has owned this land for 50 years. The road is part of it. If you want proof, check your own county records." The inspector looked uneasy. He promised to investigate further. A few days later, the sheriff returned. He shook his head with a small smile. "Tom, you were right again. The county checked. The road is yours, no doubt. The inspector cannot stop you." Tom thanked him, but he also knew what this meant. The HOA was running out of easy tricks. If they could not win with reporters or inspectors, they would try something bigger. Meanwhile, something unexpected began to happen. Some neighbors, tired of paying tolls, started speaking out against Martin. They remembered his promises of easy roads and beautiful neighborhoods. They remembered the high fees he charged them every month for HOA services. One woman approached Tom at the booth one morning. Her name was Helen. She handed him the toll, then leaned out of her car. "You are not the villain here, Tom. We know it now. Martin forced this fence and road without asking anyone. If you need us to speak in your favor, we will." Tom tipped his hat. "Thank you, Helen. The truth always comes out, even if it takes time." The HOA board grew nervous as more residents whispered about rebellion. Some wanted Martin replaced. Others wanted to leave the HOA altogether. The perfect community image was cracking. Martin responded with anger. He sent more letters, more threats, even hinting at suing Tom personally for damages. But Tom had grown stronger. He kept every paper, every record, every piece of proof. He even made copies and sent them to the county office so nothing could be lost. One evening, Tom sat by the booth counting the day's payments when Daniel, the supportive neighbor, stopped by again. "You should know, Martin is planning something big," Daniel warned. "He called a secret meeting with his closest supporters. They want to force you into court, not just with lawyers, but with pressure from all directions. They will try to break you." Tom closed his notebook and looked at the setting sun. His voice was steady. "Let them try. I will not bow to them. This is my land, and I will defend it." The air grew heavy with the coming challenge. The battle that had started with a simple fence was now turning into a war of power, pride, and survival. Tom stood firm. The toll booth was no longer just a wooden shack on the road. It had become a symbol of resistance against unfair rules. The HOA thought they could crush him with threats and pressure. But Tom had something stronger: patience, truth, and the will to fight for his rights. The letter arrived on a windy morning. Tom opened it slowly, his hands rough from work on the ranch. The words were clear. The HOA was suing him. They claimed his toll booth was illegal, that he was harassing the community, and that he had no right to charge for the road. Tom set the letter down on the table. He felt no fear, only a steady calm. This was the battle he had been expecting. When word spread, some neighbors grew worried. Others, like Daniel and Helen, came to offer support. Daniel said firmly, "If you need witnesses, I'll stand with you. The HOA tricked us too. They cut off your entrance and built on your land. The judge should know that." Helen nodded. "Many of us are tired of Martin. He pretends to protect the community, but all he cares about is control." Tom thanked them. Their voices would matter in court. The day of the trial arrived. The county courthouse stood tall, its stone walls glowing in the morning sun. Tom walked in with his file of documents under one arm and his worn hat in his hand. He wore no fancy suit, only clean work clothes, but he carried himself with quiet strength. Inside, the courtroom buzzed with people. Many residents from the neighborhood had come to watch. Some sat with the HOA, whispering nervously. Others nodded to Tom as he entered, showing silent support. At the front, Judge Harris, an older man with sharp eyes, called the room to order. Martin rose first. Standing tall in his polished suit, his lawyers surrounded him, their briefcases full of papers. Martin's voice rang out as he spoke. Your Honor, this man has caused great harm to our community. He blocks families from reaching their homes unless they pay him money. He has set up a toll booth like some outlaw. We ask the court to order him to remove it and allow free passage. The judge turned to Tom. Mr. Tom, how do you answer? Tom stood calmly. Your Honor, this land is mine. I have deeds and maps proving it. The HOA built a fence across my rightful entrance, leaving me with a muddy back trail while they took the smooth road through my ranch. They never asked my permission. They build on my property. If they want to use it, they must pay. Gasps ran through the crowd. The judge raised a hand for silence. One of Martin's lawyers stepped forward. Even if the land is his, Your Honor, he cannot charge people like a business. Roads should be free for community use. Tom opened his file and laid the papers before the judge. This is not a public road. It was never given to the community. My family has owned it for 50 years. Here's the deed, signed and sealed. Here's a county map showing the property line. And here are daily records of payments. Proof that the HOA members have been using my land without any other option. The judge studied the documents, his brow furrowed, then relaxed. He looked at the county map carefully, tracing the lines with his finger. At last, he nodded slowly. Bring up the first witness. Martin demanded, eager to regain control. Helen was called. She stepped to the stand, her voice steady. The HOA told us the road was theirs. But we saw the maps when we bought our house. We knew it was not part of their land. They lied to us. Tom is only protecting what belongs to him. Next came Daniel. He spoke of how the fence had cut Tom off, how unfair it was, and how neighbors suffered because of Martin's choices. Martin grew red with anger. He whispered fiercely to his lawyers, but each new witness weakened his case. Finally, Tom himself took the stand. The judge asked, Why did you build the toll booth? Mr. Tom's answer was clear. Because I had no choice. They blocked my entrance, stole my road, and still expected to drive across my property without respect. I do not hate my neighbors. I do not wish them harm. But I will not let the HOA trample my rights. If they want my land, they can buy it. If they want to use the road, they can pay a fair toll. The courtroom fell silent. Even some of the HOA members lowered their eyes. When all was said, Judge Harris leaned back in his chair. His voice was calm but firm. The law is clear. The land belongs to Mr. Tom. The HOA had no right to fence his entrance or build there. Rode across his property without permission. His toll booth may not be traditional, but it is legal under these circumstances. The HOA will cease its harassment. If they wish to use his road, they will continue to pay. Case closed. The gavel struck the desk with a sharp crack. The courtroom erupted. Some residents cheered. Others whispered angrily. Martin's face was pale with shock. His perfect smile was gone, replaced with a tight scowl. He stormed out without a word, his lawyers trailing behind. Tom gathered his papers and walked out slowly, tipping his hat to the judge on his way. Outside the courthouse, a crowd of supporters greeted him. Daniel clapped him on the back. Helen shook his hand. Even strangers from town praised his courage. But Tom stayed humble. This is not about winning against the HOA, he said quietly. It is about standing for what is right. No man should lose his land to power and pride. That evening, Tom returned to his ranch. The sun dipped low, painting the sky in shades of red and gold. His horses grazed peacefully, unaware of the battle their owner had just fought. The toll booth stood at the road, sturdy and strong. Tom sat there once more, notebook in hand. As the first cars rolled through, the neighbors paid without argument. Now, some even smiled, grateful the truth had come out. But Tom knew Martin would not give up forever. Men like him did not accept defeat easily. Somewhere, behind closed doors, the HOA president was planning his next move, and Tom was ready. After the courtroom victory, Tom thought the battle might finally be over. He returned to his routine, tending his horses, fixing fences, and checking the toll booth. The sun rose and set over the wide fields, and for a while, life felt calm. But Martin, the HOA president, was far from done. He retreated into the boardroom with his closest supporters, plotting quietly. The loss in court had humiliated him. He could not accept that a single rancher had beaten the HOA in front of witnesses, cameras, and even a judge. "We need a plan that will trap him," Martin said, pacing the room. "We cannot go to court again. He is too smart. We need something he will never see coming." One of the board members suggested a scheme to reroute the road. "If we dig a new path, further from his land, we can avoid paying the toll." "He cannot stop us then." Martin shook his head. "That will take months and cost too much. We need something faster, something that hurts him without breaking the law." A younger board member smiled. "What if we make him feel the pressure of the neighborhood? If enough residents complain about him, he may remove the toll voluntarily." Martin nodded slowly. "Yes, we will rally the community, exaggerate every small complaint, and make him seem unreasonable. That will force him to give in." Meanwhile, Tom continued his peaceful mornings. He walked the line of his property, checking the fence and the road. He watched neighbors drive through, some waving politely, others mumbling about the HOA. But the toll continued steadily, his notebook filled with records. And he felt satisfied that he had turned the unfair situation into fairness for himself and his family. One morning, Tom noticed flyers on his gate. They were from the HOA, warning neighbors about the dangerous toll system and illegal charges. They claimed Tom was harassing families and children. Some neighbors glanced at the flyers and shook their heads, others ignored them. Tom picked up the papers and read them carefully. He smiled quietly. Martin was trying to frighten the community, but the truth had already come out in court. The law was on his side. Still, Tom was careful. He called Daniel and Helen. "The HOA is spreading rumors," he said. "Nothing is illegal, but we must stay prepared. Keep your eyes open for anyone who might get pressured." Daniel nodded. "We will. We know the truth, Tom. Don't worry." Over the next week, the HOA began visiting homes in the neighborhood. Martin personally knocked on doors, speaking to residents about unfair tolls and property disputes. Some neighbors listened politely, but most shrugged and continued to drive through Tom's booth. The court had made a clear statement. The land belonged to Tom, and the toll was legal. Martin grew frustrated. Every attempt to turn neighbors against Tom failed. He could not force the law to change, and he could not stop people from seeing the truth. One afternoon, he tried a new tactic. He sent a letter to the county, claiming the toll booth caused safety issues. He wrote that emergency vehicles could be delayed and that children might be in danger. Tom received the notice and calmly walked to the sheriff's office. He explained the situation, showing his detailed maps, the court ruling, and his daily records. The sheriff smiled. "You are in the clear, Tom," the sheriff said. "Your toll is legal. You are careful, and there is no evidence of danger. Martin is just trying to frustrate you." Tom returned home and reinforced his booth. He added a small covered area to protect him from the sun and rain. He painted a sign showing the road was private and that tolls were required for access. Every detail was orderly and clear, leaving no room for complaints. Despite these preparations, Tom noticed a change in the neighborhood. Some drivers tried to avoid the toll by turning into side streets and small paths. These routes were rough and time-consuming, and some drivers returned frustrated to pay the toll anyway. Tom chuckled. The HOA tricks were failing. One evening, as Tom sat on the porch of his ranch house, Daniel came riding up on his horse. Tom. "I think Martin is planning something bigger," he said. "He is meeting the county officials and trying to find loopholes. He may try to force another lawsuit or inspection." Tom nodded. "Then we prepare. The first battle was won with truth. The next one will be the same." That night, Tom reviewed all his records. He created copies of deeds, court papers, and payment logs. He even mapped out the exact boundaries of his land with photos of the fence, the booth, and the road. Every detail was documented in case the HOA tried to return with new claims. A week later, Martin arrived in town with an engineer. They measured the road, pointed at the booth, and made notes. But Tom noticed them from his porch. He walked down to greet them. "Good evening," Tom said, tipping his hat. "Can I help you?" Martin's smile was tight. "We are just inspecting the road, for community safety." Tom nodded politely. "Of course, feel free to measure, take notes, and look around. You'll see everything is properly maintained." The engineer checked the road and shook his head. "This road is fine. There are no hazards. The toll booth does not block emergency vehicles." Martin scowled but could not argue. Tom stood quietly, calm and confident. As they left, Tom returned to his porch and laughed softly. Martin had tried every trick, every intimidation, every rumor, and every letter. None had worked. The truth and preparation had won again. The next morning, cars passed through the toll booth as usual. Tom greeted neighbors, collected payments, and recorded every detail. The booth was no longer just a tool for income. It had become a symbol that fairness, preparation, and calm strategy could overcome power and arrogance. Tom knew Martin would continue trying, but he also knew the HOA could not win without bending the law. And Tom had something far stronger than threats or schemes: patience, knowledge, and the support of the community. As the sun set behind the hills, Tom looked at his ranch, the toll booth, and the open sky. He felt a quiet satisfaction. The HOA had tried, but the land, justice, and persistence were on his side. The fight was not completely over, but Tom was ready for whatever came next. Tom had settled into a steady routine. Each morning he walked along the fence, checking the toll booth, recording payments, and greeting neighbors. Life felt peaceful again. The court victory had made him confident, and most residents respected his rights. But Martin, the HOA president, was far from giving up. Losing in court and failing to turn neighbors against Tom had only made him more determined. He gathered his board once again, whispering with urgency. "We need a last solution," Martin said, slamming his fist lightly on the table. "He has beaten us in every way, legally and publicly. We cannot stop using that road, but we must find a way to bypass him." One of the members suggested digging a new path behind the ranch. "If we make a hidden route, maybe he will never know. Then we can avoid paying the toll." Martin smiled, thinking of a clever plan. "We will build a narrow shortcut, small enough to avoid detection, but strong enough for cars. He cannot stop it if we do it secretly." Meanwhile, Tom noticed unusual activity near the edge of his property. Trucks and construction equipment appeared at odd hours. He raised an eyebrow and walked closer to inspect. He noticed stakes in the ground forming a straight line along the far side of his land. Someone was surveying. That evening, Tom returned home and spoke with Daniel and Helen. "I think they are planning something," he said. "The HOA may be trying to create a hidden road or shortcut. We need to stay alert." The next morning, Tom set up motion sensors and small cameras along the property line. He also placed signs reminding that this was private property and that unauthorized construction was prohibited. By midweek, Martin's team began digging a small path behind the ranch, carefully avoiding the toll booth and the main road. They tried to hide their equipment and work at night, hoping Tom would not notice. But Tom was ready. The cameras recorded every movement. When he reviewed the footage, he saw the workers and trucks quietly mapping out a shortcut. He smiled calmly. He had expected this. The next day, he took action. Tom visited the county office with all his photos, video footage, and maps. He explained that the HOA was attempting unauthorized construction on his private land. The county inspector promised to investigate immediately and warned that any construction without permission could result in fines. In legal action, Martin's plan was interrupted before it could succeed. The county sent inspectors to the site. They stopped the work and ordered the HOA to remove all equipment from Tom's land. Martin was furious. He had underestimated Tom's vigilance and preparation. That afternoon, Tom reinforced the toll booth. He added small reflective markers, better signage, and a small gravel path leading from the main road to the booth, making it clear that this was the official entrance. He wanted neighbors to know the only legal way to cross his property was through the toll booth. Some neighbors, curious about the halted construction, drove up to Tom's booth. Daniel and Helen explained what had happened. They tried to build a hidden road, Daniel said, but Tom caught them first. He is always prepared. Tom laughed quietly. It is not luck. It is paying attention and being ready. People think they can take shortcuts, but they forget that fairness cannot be avoided. The following week, Martin sent more letters, claiming Tom was harassing his workers and threatening legal action. But Tom was calm. He had photographic proof of every activity, showing that the land was private and the HOA had acted without permission. The sheriff and county officials now fully supported him. When the HOA attempted to force another inspection, the authorities reminded them that Tom had the legal right to protect his property. Martin could only fume in silence. One morning, a group of HOA members approached the toll booth. They tried to argue with Tom, saying the shortcut idea was harmless and would benefit residents. Tom listened quietly. "You cannot build on my property without my permission," Tom said. "The law and the court agree. If you want a road, you must negotiate and pay fairly. Anything else is trespassing." The HOA members left without another word. They had no legal ground and no support from the county. Their plan to bypass the toll had failed completely. Tom returned to his ranch house, enjoying the view of his fields and horses. He thought about how the situation had changed over the past months. What started as a simple dispute over a fence had turned into a test of patience, strategy, and perseverance. That evening, Daniel and Helen stopped by again. "Tom, you handled this brilliantly," Helen said. "They tried everything, and yet you stayed calm, collected, and ready. Most people would have lost their cool." Tom smiled. "The key is preparation and knowing your rights." The HOA thought force and tricks would work. They underestimated careful planning. As the sun set, the toll booth stood quietly at the entrance. It was no longer just a wooden structure. It had become a symbol of human ingenuity and determination. Every coin in the collection box represented more than money. It represented fairness, preparation, and the refusal to give in to unfair power. Martin, meanwhile, retreated into his office, frustrated and defeated. He realized that no amount of scheming could outsmart a person who knew his land, knew the law, and stayed calm under pressure. Tom knew the fight was not entirely over, but he also knew something important. Strength was not in anger or threats. It was in knowledge, preparation, and the quiet confidence to defend what was rightfully yours. The horses grazed peacefully, the wind blew gently across the fields, and the toll booth remained at the road, ready to protect Tom's land. The HOA's desperate plan had failed, and Tom had turned every attempt against him into proof of his rightful control. Life returned to a steady rhythm. Tom walked his land each day, checked the toll booth, and recorded payments. The HOA tried no more secret roads. The neighbors respected him, some even offering thanks and kind words. Tom realized that this was more than just a victory over the HOA. It was a lesson in patience, intelligence, and the power of standing firm without losing your calm. And as the stars appeared above the ranch that night, Tom felt certain of one thing: no fence, no trick, no threat could ever take away what was truly his. After months of tension, Tom finally felt a sense of peace returning to his ranch. The toll booth had become a steady part of his life. Each morning he walked along the road, checked the booth, and recorded payments in his neat notebook. The Coins and bills in the collection box represented more than money. They symbolized fairness, preparation, and standing up for what was right. The HOA had tried every possible trick. They sent letters, threatened lawsuits, attempted hidden roads, and even tried to sway neighbors against him. But every move had failed. Tom had remained calm, prepared, and legally protected. Every action he took was backed by evidence, maps, deeds, and court rulings. Martin, the HOA president, was quieter now. He no longer tried secret shortcuts or threats. Even the letters stopped. It seemed he had realized that Tom could not be intimidated or outsmarted. One morning, a group of neighbors drove up together. Daniel was at the front, smiling, with Helen and a few others behind him. Tom. Daniel called as he stepped out of the car. "We just wanted to say thank you. You stood up for yourself and for all of us. The HOA tried to trick us, but you showed us the truth." Tom tipped his hat. "Thank you, Daniel. I only defended my property. The rest was up to fairness and truth." Helen stepped closer. "You also showed us how to stand up without anger. That is something most people forget." Tom smiled. "Patience, planning, and honesty are more powerful than threats or tricks." That afternoon, Tom worked on reinforcing the toll booth. He added a small roof, painted fresh signs, and built a gravel pathway that guided cars smoothly through. The entrance, the neighbors noticed the effort and complimented him. The booth no longer looked temporary. It was now a permanent, well-maintained part of the ranch. The community slowly began to change its attitude. Many residents who once grumbled about paying the toll now respected it. They understood that the toll was not greed but fairness. They also saw the strength it took to protect property and rights. Some even joked with Tom as they handed over their payment, laughing about how Martin had underestimated him. Tom also worked quietly on improving the land around the entrance. He planted flowers and trimmed bushes along the road. He added a small waiting area for drivers, with a bench and shade. Soon, the toll booth became more than just a collection point. It was a landmark on the ranch, a symbol of fairness and order. One afternoon, the county sheriff stopped by. "Tom," he said, tipping his hat, "I have to say, you handled everything perfectly. Every time the HOA tried something, you had proof and patience. You protected your land without breaking the law." Tom nodded. "It was not easy, but staying calm and prepared makes the difference." Even Martin eventually showed up, alone this time. He walked slowly to the booth, his face serious. Tom greeted him politely. "I suppose you won," Martin said quietly. "I tried everything, and nothing worked." "You were always ready," Tom replied calmly. "This was never about winning or losing. It was about fairness. The road, the entrance, and the toll are all legal. You should respect the law and the rights of others." Martin looked down, then nodded. "I will. From now on, we will follow the rules." After he left, Tom felt a sense of closure. The long battle with the HOA was finally ending. The threats, tricks, and legal battles had taught him one important lesson: preparation, patience, and knowledge were stronger than any power or intimidation. Neighbors continued to pass through the toll booth daily. Some waved, some smiled, and some handed over their payment quietly. Tom recorded every transaction, keeping careful notes. The income was steady, but the most important reward was the respect he earned from the community. The horses grazed peacefully in the fields, the sun set over the hills, and the ranch felt safe once again. Tom often sat on the porch in the evening, watching the road, the booth, and the land he had fought to protect. He remembered the first day Martin had blocked his entrance and smiled quietly. That day had changed everything. It had been more than a fight for money or access. It had been a fight for rights, fairness, and standing up without anger. And now, the results were clear. Tom's property was secure, the toll booth was respected, and even the HOA had finally accepted the truth. One sunny morning, a small group of children from the neighborhood rode past on bicycles. They waved at Tom as they passed through the booth, laughing and happy. Tom waved back, feeling a deep sense of satisfaction. The toll booth was no longer a source of tension. It had become a landmark, a lesson, and a symbol of courage and justice. That evening, Tom sat quietly on the porch, sipping water and watching the sun dip below the horizon. The ranch was calm, the road was secure, and his work was complete. He reflected on the months of struggle, the battles with Martin, the threats, and the court proceedings. Every challenge had been met with patience, preparation, and calm determination. Tom finally understood that the real victory was not the toll money. It was the respect he had earned, the lessons he had proven about fairness, and the knowledge that even one person, prepared and steady, could protect what was rightfully theirs. As the stars appeared above the ranch, Tom looked out over the land. Proud and content, the toll booth stood firmly by the road. The fence was strong, and the community had learned a powerful lesson about fairness and respect. And with that, Tom knew he had not only won the battle against the HOA, but had also secured peace, respect, and a lasting legacy on his ranch. The land was his, the tolls were fair, and the lessons would not be forgotten. The ranch, the booth, and the entrance stood as a symbol for everyone. Persistence, patience, and preparation always triumph over arrogance and shortcuts. Tom leaned back, tipped his hat, and smiled at the road ahead. He was ready for anything the future might bring.